Chapter 11. Ambush the Stalker. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After hiding in the tree, Hichinga took out a few ungraded talismans from his storage bag. Some of them were left over from his study of talisman refinement. There were cleaning talismans, sound isolating talismans, air isolating talismans. In general, they could be considered functional talismans. Hichinga stuck a sound isolating talisman on his body as well as an air isolating talisman. They blocked the sound of his breathing and the aura he emitted. Lowering his presence to the minimum, he used hearing to keep an eye on the burly man who had been following him. Now, his ability had already modeled the burly man's specific image in his mind. The ability to create a model from hearing was quite insane. This was the most basic ability that Hichinga had mastered so far. After the isolation talismans were pasted, Hichinga also pasted a few amulets and Vajra talismans on his body, followed by the body lifting talisman and the divine strider talisman. Other than the isolation talismans, the other talismans were not activated immediately. After activation, they would be maintained for a period of time. If the time was exceeded, these talismans would naturally become useless. Hichinga did not want to waste them like this. After a while, the burly man who had followed Hichinga arrived. The main reason was that Hichinga had used the divine strider talisman, which greatly increased his speed and left the man quite a distance away. As soon as he arrived, he immediately began to be on guard. He then made strange sounds. It sounded like he was calling out to a bird. Hichinga's expression suddenly became nervous. He knew this man in front of him, or rather, he had seen him before. The previous modeling did not show any color, nor did it show any prominent clothing. Looking at the familiar clothes of the person in front of him, he recalled that this person had been eating at the table beside him in Tianxian City. His mind raced. Could it be that this person had targeted him at that time? This burly man had a fierce face and a tall and sturdy figure, like an iron tower. After not hearing any response for a long time, his face darkened. He had already seen the traces of a battle on the ground, and there were some mottled blood stains. From the beginning to the end, he had never thought that the man in black would be killed by Hichinga. The burly man's expression was quite ugly. The first thing he thought about was that the black-clothed man had found a powerful treasure after killing Hichinga and had now escaped. The burly man thought of this, but Hichinga did not think of it. This might be the difference between thinking. As for the possibility of the black-clothed man being killed by Hichinga, it did not occur to him. He was quite clear about the strength of the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man was an extremely powerful existence in the late stage of the Qi refinement realm. It was impossible for him to be killed by a kid in the 5th level of the Qi refinement realm in such a short time. Soon, the burly man keenly noticed that there was a piece of stone on top of the huge rock that was covered in blood. After sensing that there was no one else around, the burly man immediately went forward and was about to reach out to pick it up. However, just as his palm was about to touch the cloth, he stopped. Years of tribulations had made him cautious. Many times when he went out to kill people, the remaining things left behind could cause people like him to suffer a lot. The burly man took out a pair of golden gloves that were as thin as cicada leaves. Hichinga, who was hiding on a big tree not far away, glanced at the scene from the corner of his eye and was quite surprised. He did not look at him directly. Instead, he sized him up from the corner of his eyes. Cultivators were quite sensitive to everything around them. If Hichinga looked at him directly, he might be sensed. If he used his peripheral vision, the possibility of being discovered would be reduced by 90%. The burly man carefully put on his gloves before picking up the stone and holding the blood-red clothing in front of him for observation. The burly man did not realize that the blood-stained clothing was left behind by the man in black. Hichinga had chosen the undergarment. It was impossible for this man to know such a private thing. He saw the message on the ground, and the colors kept changing. If you want him, come to Black Tiger City. He did not think that their planned robbery would be intercepted by others during the process. He had some understanding of Black Tiger City. There was a group of strong people who did business without capital like them. They were not weak. Most importantly, they outnumbered him. If he really went over, would that not mean that he would never return? However, if he did not go over, the man in black and Hichinga would fall into the other party's hands. The burly man was obviously thinking too much. Hichinga had just randomly chosen a city near his mission destination. He did not expect that the burly man would be shocked. Looking at the burly man below, his expression kept changing. He gritted his teeth and sighed. It was a missed opportunity. The burly man was helpless. As for his underling, he would just find another one. Just as the burly man was sighing, Hichinga held nearly 100 steel needles in his hand. As long as they one had not reached the foundation establishment stage or specialized in body cultivation, ordinary divine weapons were enough to break through one's defenses, especially when one did not use spiritual power to protect one's body. Hichinga instantly threw out all the poison steel needles in his hand. Even the finest steel needle would make a sound when it flew against the air at such a fast speed. The moment the sound of air being torn apart sounded, the burly man became alert. Spiritual energy instantly filled his entire body. However, when he raised his head and saw that all of them were ordinary steel needles, he instantly lost interest. He felt as if he had been teased. Even so, the brawny man was still prepared to go all out. The speed of these steel needles was too fast, and the area covered was too large. It was difficult to dodge, so he could only block. The flying sword in his hand flew out and floated in front of him. He activated his spiritual power and instantly formed a circle in front of him like a windmill. How dare you resist? Hichinga's question was like the angry roar of a god. It was like the sound of thunder that resounded through the world. Berating was activated. The flying sword that was spinning at high speed instantly stopped. The brawny man's entire person was stunned. His pupils dilated slightly as if he could not focus. The spiritual energy in his body was instantly chaotic, and the spiritual energy barrier outside also dissipated. All the steel needles passed through his flying sword defense and spiritual power defense, directly piercing his body. When they pierced his body, they made a metallic sound. Hichinga was shocked. He threw out all the thunderbolts in his bag and used a high-grade offensive talisman, the Flying Sword Talisman. When the burly man was wearing the golden gloves, he had already secretly activated a protection talisman just in case. He did not expect that it would really come in handy. The explosion of the thunderbolts instantly resounded. The power was quite terrifying, and a pit was blasted in the surroundings. Chapter 12. Gold Belt for Murder and Arson. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The moment the thunderbolts exploded, the flying sword talisman was activated by Hichinga. It was like a real magic weapon flying sword, which was quite powerful. Moreover, this was a high-grade offensive talisman. Even this rude and unreasonable man could not withstand it. Hichinga still underestimated the power of his berating ability. The superb level was simply too unbelievable. The steel needles and the thunderbolts had directly broken the burly man's protective talisman. Then, the flying sword talisman directly cut off the burly man's head. Not to mention someone in the chi refinement realm, even if they were in the foundation establishment realm, as long as the head was cut off, there was no hope of survival. However, the soul of someone in the foundation establishment realm had a chance of turning into a malicious ghost. Almost all of the attacks were completed in an instant. Hichinga did not even know the name of the person who followed him, and he was not interested in keeping him alive for interrogation. After all, the other party's level was indeed higher than his. If he was not careful, he might be in trouble. Finally, there was the delightful corpse search segment. Hichinga did not miss any part of the burly man's body. He obtained a storage bag, a flying sword, a few bottles of chi pellets, hundreds of spirit coins, dozens of spirit stones, a rusty copper plate, and finally, a diary. Of course, he did not forget the golden gloves on the burly man's hands. Chinga did not directly touch the corpse to prevent the other party from using poison. After everything was packed up, Chinga set fire to cremate him. Chinga quickly put on a divine strider talisman on his horse. The next morning after Chinga left the sect. What do you mean Chinga has already left the sect and the spirit beast that was sent to monitor him has disappeared? The people who were monitoring him with the spirit beast didn't find any traces of a battle. I knew he must have a big secret. After Zhang Jianqi heard Zhang Lingmu's report, not only did he not get angry, he even laughed out loud. Chinga had already received the mission details. This was not the first time he had bullied the weak. Practice made perfect. Many of them had all kinds of secrets, and he had also benefited a lot from them. In that case, I'll go personally, Zhang Jianqi said with a smile. Second young master, do you want me to go with you? Zhang Lingmu asked. Forget about that. I'll bring Zhang Yi and Zhang Er with me. Zhang Jianqi merely glanced at him. Zhang Yi and Zhang Er were servants that the Zhang family had nurtured since they were young. Their strength was quite good, and they had also reached the late stage of the qi refinement realm. However, they were indeed a little old. The maximum lifespan of a qi refinement realm cultivator was 180 years. Zhang Yi and Zhang Er had already lived for more than 60 years. They did not have many years left to live. The maximum lifespan was 180 years, but not many people could live to the full limit. It was precisely because they had lived for a long time that their spells were quite proficient and their attacks were quite powerful. However, as they aged, their overall strength also declined. Their bodies were aging, which was an inevitable process. Even with the help of the rank .1 face-preserving pill, there was still no way to retain their looks forever. The true appearance of their bodies could still be seen, and many wrinkles had already appeared. Chinga's horse galloped for a while before they stopped at a small town to rest. This was an ordinary small town. Basically, it was filled with ordinary people. At most, there were some martial arts experts. In this world, there were martial arts as well as immortal cultivators. However, the upper limit of martial arts was very low. They could also be roughly divided into third rate, second rate, first rate, top notch, master, grandmaster, great grandmaster, and supreme grandmaster. Although there were so many levels, it was still not enough. The master level could roughly correspond to the first 3 levels of the qi refinement realm, the grandmaster level corresponded to the middle 3 levels, the great grandmaster level corresponded to the last 3 levels, and the supreme grandmaster level corresponded to the perfected qi refinement realm, level 10 to level 12. The supreme grandmaster level was the peak of martial arts. There were no levels above that, and the path ended there. The correspondence mentioned here was only a rough correspondence of realms. In general, cultivators still had many advantages. Whether it was talismans, magic treasures, or medicinal pills, they were basically all exclusive to cultivators. The talismans drawn by immortal cultivators could not be used by martial art practitioners. The qi and blood in their bodies could not activate the talismans. Just from this point alone, the difference in combat strength could be seen. However, the cultivation of martial artists was not completely useless. For many body cultivators, the cultivation of martial arts had many benefits. Their bodies were filled with qi and blood. Chinga's hearing allowed him to monitor the entire city. Many small rumors and all kinds of gossip gathered in his ears. It was simply a divine weapon for eavesdropping. In a short period of time, Chinga already had a general understanding of the entire city. He could basically eliminate the threat to himself. He pasted a few talismans in the room and began to check his gains. Looking at the 2 flying swords in his storage bag, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Although he had mocked the man in black for being poor at first, he was actually not very poor. In fact, he was very rich. Of course, the comparison here was with the rogue cultivators. One had to know that even Hichinga could not afford the price of a flying sword. Moreover, it was a high-grade level 1 flying sword, so its value was even greater. It was estimated that it could be sold for thousands of low-grade spirit stones in the black market or in the gathering place of itinerant cultivators. Moreover, he had obtained 2 flying swords at once. It was the equivalent of getting rich overnight, and that was not counting anything else. No wonder this man had a gold belt for murder and arson. Even someone as cautious as Hichinga was a little convinced. The harvest he gained in one go was equivalent to many years of saving up in the sect, striving to break through before his lifespan was exhausted. What did immortal cultivation mean? In fact, it was about time. Logically speaking, if a person had endless time, even those with weak spiritual root purity could achieve success in cultivation. This led to the fact that only those with extraordinary talent or those who were not outstanding would choose to cultivate other immortal arts. Ordinary people would do their best to focus on cultivation and break through before their lifespan ended. Apart from spirit stones, there were also spirit coins. Spirit stones not be used directly for cultivation. It was possible to forcefully use spirit stones to cultivate, but the impurities contained in them would cause a certain degree of damage to the body. Most of them were used for array formations, puppets, and even special magic tools. Spirit coins were the currency used to purchase processed spirit stones. One could extract pure spiritual power from the spirit stones and use a special method to forge them into spirit coins. Basically, only large sects had this kind of method. The Tian Xian sect was one of the large sects that could independently develop spirit coins. Chapter 13. Diary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thinking about the conversion between spirit stones and spirit coins, one could tell that these large sects could easily profit from ordinary cultivators. It was similar to the currency hegemony in Hichinga's previous life, but it was stronger and more overbearing. A group of large sects could discuss and limit the amount of spiritual energy in a unit of currency. They had a tacit understanding of each other to profit from the entire world. After obtaining spirit stones, itinerant cultivators could not directly use them for cultivation. They could only think of ways to exchange spirit coins with these large sections. This formed the most superficial cycle. This was considered to be the luck of a rogue cultivator to discover a spirit stone mine. It would not allow them to increase their strength quickly in a short period of time. This led to the world's hierarchy being solidified, and the probability of rogue cultivators wanting to stand out was too low. There were many rogue cultivators who had lost all their conscience in order to survive and cultivate. However, they were also very discerning. Even if it was a robbery, they would only choose those disciples who did small chores. They did not even dare to touch the outer sect disciples. Many disciples who went out to do sect missions would basically wear the sect's uniform to show their identity. Other than the extremely vicious and evil rogue cultivators, most people would not find trouble with them. The main thing was that they might not be able to win. However, the miscellaneous disciples were usually supernumerary personnel trained by large sects to serve. After all, with so many people cultivating, it was impossible for there to be no one to serve. Moreover, the miscellaneous disciples needed to work and cultivate. Usually, they did not have much time to cultivate, and their situation was not necessarily much better than that of the itinerant cultivators. When sect disciples went out on missions, the main threat did not come from these itinerant cultivators. In this world, where there were benefits, there would be competition. Where there was competition, there would be opponents, and where there were opponents, there would be enemies. There were many old rivals of the Tian Xian sect, and all of them were powerful forces that could not be defeated. Hichinga was not too sure about the exact reason, but he knew that some of it was because of the fight for the spirit stones. Therefore, it was safer for a miscellaneous disciple like him to not wear the sect's uniform in some situations. Chinga carefully examined the man's golden gloves. He did not know what material they were made of, but they were as thin as a cicada's wings. They were quite tough and soft. Even if they used force to tear the gloves, it would not cause any damage. Chinga took out the divine weapon that he had specially forged and tried to pull on the golden gloves. However, he found that it did not leave a trace. Chinga was already quite surprised that it was able to reach this level. However, he did not use his sword to test its strength. If the gloves were damaged, there was no use feeling regretful then. If they could be damaged by these mortal divine weapons, it meant that they were not a treasure. After a simple examination of the talismans and pills, he put them away. He was more familiar with these things. Finally, his gaze stopped on the rusty copper plate and the diary. Chinga's gaze was a little strange. Who would write a diary? The copper plate had decayed so badly that the words engraved on it could not be seen clearly. After studying it for a long time, he could not find any special use. In the end, he could only open the diary first. In the 99,670th year of the Taishan calendar, after a night of begging and wailing, the teacher opposite finally agreed to teach me how to read. Looking at the sadness on my mother's face, I felt a little uncomfortable, so I said to her that I didn't want to study. My mother slapped me. Still remember her pained expression at that time. It was also the first time she had hit me in my memory. It was the first time that my strong mother had tears on her cheeks. I immediately panicked. Therefore, I vowed to study hard and do my best to study. Now, I have a small achievement. Whenever I recall the scene at that time, I can't help but feel emotional. Records of the 99,696th of the Taishan calendar. Chinga finished reading the first short entry, which was recorded 26 years ago. Roughly estimating, the oldest record was around 30 years ago. Chinga had reincarnated, and many of his memories were now very vague. Of course, he still remembered the important things. He continued reading. Today, when they heard that an immortal had come to the city, many people went to visit, hoping to come into close contact with them. I also wanted to go, but unfortunately, I didn't have the qualifications and could only watch from afar. When I realized that the immortal also had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, I felt a little disappointed. Shaking my head, I quickly left the place. The imperial examination was about to begin, so I still have to study seriously. Compared to seeking the Tao from immortals, I have more hope of becoming a scholar. Immortals were a far-fetched dream. Records of the 99,697th year of the Taishan calendar. I didn't expect that I would still fail despite having prepared so well. Am I worthy of my mother's expectations? The imperial examinations don't only require one to study hard but also to have money in their hands. What's the use of reading this book? It's really unfair. Why were some people born to be emperors while others were born to be ants? Lu Qianjun also failed and invited me to climb the mountain to disperse my qi. He didn't seem to be disappointed. It's also because his father is the prefect, so he's a person worth befriending. There were many people traveling with me, and most of them were the sons of dignitaries. It really made me a little envious and jealous. I really wanted to replace any one of them. Even though they failed in the examination, they could still be so carefree. Records of the 99,698th of the Taishan calendar. In the west of the Great Yu State, there's a tall mountain peak. From afar, it looks dark and is called the Black Mountain. It's said that there are many jackals and ferocious beasts there, and they're quite fierce and brutal. I really can't understand why these young masters who live in such a world would want to go to such a dangerous place. Even if they failed the exam, isn't it better to go to the Purple Jade Garden than climb a mountain to calm down? I heard that there are many martial arts masters. I saw with my own eyes that their feet are as light as birds. I really wish I can be like them. Unfortunately, these martial arts manuals are also things that I can only dream of. When I climbed the mountain with them, I realized that these young masters were in good health. They had been polishing their bodies since they were young, and their martial arts were not weak. No wonder they dared to come to this place. People like me who had been doing farm work since young were not as strong as them. For a moment, I had mixed feelings. My studies are not better than theirs, and my body is not as good as theirs. When will I be able to stand out and live the life I want? The most infuriating thing is that they're still polite to me. I can't even be angry at them. Records of the 99,698th of the Taishan calendar. Chapter 14. Immortal Destiny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Chinga read the diary, he roughly knew that the so-called diary in front of him was a biography. The man would write down entries every once in a while. As Chinga continued reading, he found himself unable to stop. Moreover, there might be important information hidden inside. The journey was really thrilling. Such powerful wild beasts emerged one after another, and the sword lights were stained with blood. The 2-meter tall giant bear was actually cut down by Lu Qianjuan's sword. How could there be such a huge gap between people? If only I had such strength. It said that the third mountain peak of Black Mountain is often shining with strange lights. They're quite beautiful. This was our final destination. We wanted to see the scenery on the top of the mountain and see what exactly was shining. Along the way, we passed through many obstacles, so the wild beasts that blocked our way basically became souls under our swords and delicious food in our stomachs. The meat of those wild beasts was really delicious. My family background could be considered to be decent, but I really can't afford to eat wild beast meat. This time, it was really worth it to come with them to relax. It seems that I have to work harder to befriend Lu Qianjun. I don't know how much time had passed, but the trees on the Black Mountain were really lush. The sky was covered by the sun, making one feel that there was no sunlight. As we crawled and walked, my bones felt like they were falling apart. Finally, we approached the place that was flashing with strange lights. We had arrived at the third mountain peak. What we saw were strange flowers all over the ground. I don't know the names of these flowers, but they're very different from ordinary flowers and plants. The scenery was quite mesmerizing. This was probably the most beautiful scenery I had ever seen in my life. The people who came along were all shocked by this scene. One of the martial artists took the lead to pluck a flower. However, after the flower was in his hand, it instantly shattered and withered, turning into specks of light. Such a change shocked everyone present. The speed of withering was even faster than that of epiphyllum. While everyone was reeling in from our shock, the martial artist who picked the flower suddenly fell to the ground. The flesh and blood on his body disappeared in an instant, as if they had been sucked dry by something. Only his white skeleton was left. The people who were originally shocked and emotional were completely stunned. It was fear from now knowing what had happened. Everyone instantly distanced themselves from the flowers, retreating far away, afraid that we would follow in the same footsteps if we were not careful. This place was too strange. I carefully hid behind everyone. At this moment, a huge head suddenly appeared in the sea of flowers. It was a giant python. The colors on its body were extremely colorful and beautiful. I'm actually using the word beautiful to describe a python. From this, you should be able to feel the strangeness of this python. The giant python's body was quite huge. Its eyes were the size of jade plates. Its eyes were very lively, and its expression was slightly human-like. A demon beast. How could there be a demon beast in this place? A warrior in the crowd shouted with a trembling voice. So, this thing is called a demon beast. That was the first time I had heard of it. It seemed to have the intelligence of a human. Under such circumstances, the crowd immediately became chaotic and began to escape quickly in all directions. I wanted to run too, but the problem was that the others knew martial arts. I could not outrun them at all. This python seemed to be quite intelligent. If I could communicate with it, would I have a chance of survival? I didn't follow the others who quickly ran away. I stood where I was and didn't move. Even if I ran, I would be the first to die. It was better to stay and fight for a chance of survival. Of course, the chances were slim. However, the fact that I was able to record this incident proved that I had successfully survived. The others quickly ran down the mountain. My body was also stiff from fear. When the giant python saw this group of people running away quickly, it immediately chased after them with its huge body. It quickly slithered past me as if it did not see me and saved my life from the hands of the Grim Reaper. I heaved a sigh of relief and thought about how to survive. If I stayed where I was now, I would definitely die when the python came back. But I would definitely die if I ran down the mountain. Seeing that there was a small path beside this strange sea of flowers, I decided to walk over and take a look. Anyway, the chances of surviving were quite slim now, so I might as well add a few strands of novelty to my dull life. I didn't expect this trip to Black Mountain to really be the right one. The heavens were simply helping me. There was actually a mystic realm left behind by an immortal here. I could also become an immortal. Why did I still need to study and take an exam? The secret realm of immortals was actually in such a place. Records of the 99,698th year of the Taishan calendar. When Hichinga read up to this point, his pupils contracted slightly. Could it be that his luck was that good? This was the first time he had come out and he had encountered such a thing. There were many so-called mystic realms in the entire cultivation world, but those who could leave behind mystic realms had to be at least a mighty figure in the cultivation world. They had to at least reach the realm above the divine transformation realm to be able to leave behind mystic realms. People below the soul formation realm could naturally leave behind their legacies, but they could not form a secret realm that was like a small space. Hichinga was also a little excited. Was his luck really going to change? After being mediocre for so many years, he was going to take off completely after successfully contracting a pet. He suppressed his excitement and looked down. I'm happy that it's really the inheritance of an immortal, but unfortunately, my talent is very poor and I'm too old. My spiritual root purity is only 5, which is called a pseudo-spiritual root. I basically can't break through. Could it be that even though it's right in front of me, I still can't obtain it? How hateful, how infuriating. After the talent test, there were actually 3 tests. I only managed to pass the small obstacle of the first test and obtained a bottle of strange medicinal pills. After eating them, they actually increased my spiritual root purity. It seems that the heavens had been kind to me. It's a pity that I only passed the first test. What kind of treasures would I have obtained if I passed the later tests? Only after I started cultivating did I realize how precious treasures that can improve one's spiritual root purity are. My spiritual root purity is only 5. It's simply trash. Those with a spiritual root purity below 5 were completely unable to cultivate and were called useless. Those with spiritual root purity below 10 were basically unable to break through and were known as pseudo-spiritual roots. Those who scored above 10 were called true spiritual roots, which meant that they could cultivate normally, but there was a difference in talent. Records of the 99,700th year of the Taishan calendar. When Hichinga read up to this point, he was shocked and even more surprised. He had lived in a large sect like the Tian Xian sect since he was young, so he knew far more than rogue cultivators. Chapter 15. Unusual. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A pill that could directly increase one's spiritual root purity could almost be considered a divine medicine. It was quite rare, and there were probably only a few in the Tian Xian sect. Not to mention, this was a matter of raising pseudo-spiritual roots that were close to the level of useless spiritual roots to a level where they could cultivate. The ones who could cultivate here probably had a high purity. According to the previous diary records, Chinga estimated that the man was already in his 30s before he went to Black Mountain. According to the writing, his cultivation age was probably around 35 years old. It had only been 30 years since he had recorded these entries. It was unbelievable that an ordinary person could become a powerful late-stage Qi refinement realm rogue cultivator in 30 years. Chinga had been cultivating since he was 6 years old. Now, after more than 20 years, he was only at the 5th level of the Qi refinement realm. Moreover, 6 years old was the best age to start cultivating. At that time, the spiritual root purity was 20. From this, it could be seen how powerful the medicinal pills were. They were only the reward for the first test in the mystic realm. Chinga was tempted. After so many years, how could he not envy the speed of others' cultivation? However, it was also because of his powerful talent in the heart of beast taming that he was able to become restrained. Otherwise, he might be like most of the miscellaneous disciples, doing nothing for the rest of his life. Although he wished he could immediately head into the mystic realm, he still maintained his vigilance. Could the things recorded in this diary be true? After all, who would write a diary or a biography? Practitioners had a good memory, and their physical fitness had improved in all aspects. There was no need to record these things. Why did this person write these things down in a diary? Other than the burly man who was killed by Chinga, only the person who killed him could see the diary. If the information recorded in this diary was a trap, it would be dangerous. Chinga had always been extremely vigilant about this world. Even if he hoped that this mystic realm was real, he could not go and investigate it now. Moreover, he had the talent of the heart of beast taming, which allowed him to share his pet's talents. Even without this mystic realm, his future was still quite bright. Chinga read the rest of the diary. Other than some records, there was not much valuable information. However, it did mark the gathering places of many wandering cultivators. Chinga put these things aside and prepared to complete the sect mission first. If he could successfully become the disciple of the Imperial Beast Peak's peak master in the future, he could tell him this news. Then, he naturally would not have to complete the exploration mission himself. He could use the information to exchange for the spirit pets he wanted and cultivation resources. He could also obtain the qualifications to enter the mystic realm. Chinga had never thought of monopolizing the mystic realm. Who knew what kind of person left behind the mystic realm? Could it be a backup plan for the demonic path to revive? However, if he did not become a legacy disciple of the Imperial Beast Peak, then this news could be kept a secret for the time being. Without the corresponding status, others could not obtain the corresponding remuneration. Even if a mere miscellaneous disciple reported the news of this mystic realm, and it was a real mystic realm, the benefits he could obtain were too little. He might as well hide this news for now. No one else would know anyway. He would wait until he became an official disciple and his status in the sect rose before releasing this news. The most important things now were the sect's mission and the threat from the Zhang family. However, from the previous battle, his berating ability was really powerful. A late-stage Qi refinement expert did not have the strength to resist his berating at all. It seemed that he still had to learn a few more Dao protection techniques. He would go back and look for spells related to sound. With the talent of the sound, gathering butterfly, he was quite sensitive to spells related to sound. It would be twice the result with half the effort. When Chinga killed the two experts, he had already calmed down a lot, and the pressure had dissipated a lot. Chinga already knew that the only people who wanted to deal with him were Zhang Jianqi and Zhang Jinxiang. As for the rest of the Zhang family, that was impossible. Chinga was not qualified to be the opponent of the entire Zhang family. Moreover, the Zhang brothers were not considered the main branch of the Zhang family. They were only outer sect disciples at the moment. The main problem was how many people would come after him. Chinga would not be so arrogant as to think that he could be unrivaled in the crowd. After a short rest, Chinga set off for Beacon City again. For the sex mission, he had bought many evil warding talismans to specifically restrain all kinds of strange demons. He soon arrived at a small county town near Beacon City. Chinga left his horse in an inn. He did not ride it directly to Beacon City. If the Zhang family followed him, they would be able to find him in an instant. Chinga took off his Taoist robe and put on ordinary clothes, preparing to pretend to be an ordinary person to get some information. He had a unique temperament after refining his qi. This could be said to be a special trait that could not be hidden without practicing breath restraining. As long as the other party was an immortal cultivator, they could tell that he was also an immortal cultivator. The past 20 years of his life had been peaceful and comfortable, and he had never left the sect. Thus, he never had to cultivate the art of breath restraining. He needed to make up for it when he went back. The main reason was that he needed points to learn spells. In order to get a spirit pet as soon as possible, he had to give up on learning these things. Beacon City was one of the bigger cities nearby. The city walls were relatively tall and looked very sturdy. All of them were built with neat and huge stones. It was obvious that the amount of manpower and resources needed to build such walls was quite huge. According to the information he had gathered about Beacon City, it was a large city with a permanent population of several million. Chinga had been walking around the city for a while now, but he realized that there were fewer pedestrians on the road. As they walked, they all looked hurried. They did not look like they were bustling with life. Instead, their faces were covered in a layer of gray. This was quite abnormal. Chinga's eyelids twitched slightly. Was the sect mission not labeled as an ordinary mission? As for Zhang Jianxiang and his brother, they had no right to change the label of the sect mission. At most, they could only bribe the person who issued the mission and make them not give Chinga the easier sect missions. After all, the sect's mission record manual was a magic treasure. The information on it was specially recorded. The first thing Chinga wanted to do was to leave this place. The problem was that he had already received the sect mission. If he gave up because of this situation, it would not make sense for him to go back. If the mission failed and there was no special reason, he would be forced to do a dangerous mission. Chapter 16. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Observing the unusual Beacon City, Chinga's first thought was to leave. He immediately left Beacon City. The mission was indeed important, but his life was more important. At the same time, he circulated the spiritual power in his body and activated the evil warding talisman on his body. This place looked quite strange and unusual. The moment the evil warding talisman was activated, Chinga's eyelids twitched. The evil warding talisman stuck to his body was burning hot as though it was actually burning. It had obviously triggered the evil warding effect. The sound gathering butterfly on his shoulder was also trembling its wings slightly. Chinga could feel its emotions. It was quite anxious. As he walked, Chinga suddenly stopped in his tracks. On the way here, he had used hearing to carve out the entire route in his mind, and it formed a map. Now, he suddenly realized that the path he took was wrong. It was different from the map in his mind. He instantly became alert. What the hell was this place? A huge maze that could envelop a large city, be it an illusion or some sort of array, was definitely not something that ordinary cultivators could set up. His vision must have been disrupted. Chinga closed his eyes and used hearing with all his might. He wanted to use the sound waves to scout the way for him. The wall in front of him disappeared in an instant. He forced himself to calm down and left the place according to the route. The level of the mission had exceeded his current ability. Chinga left without looking back. After quickly leaving Beacon City, the two evil warding talismans on Chinga's body had completely burned up. He was still a little worried, so he activated the third talisman. In the end, the third talisman burned halfway. This situation really made him feel a little scared. He quickly rushed to the place where he kept his horse. At the very least, he did not find anything wrong when he came. After arriving at the small county town, Chinga heaved a sigh of relief. Everything was as usual, and the evil warding talisman on his body had not been triggered. He found an inn to settle down and pondered. To be able to trigger the evil warding talisman on his body meant that the evil spirits in Beacon City were causing trouble. However, how powerful must the evil be to be able to envelop the entire city in an illusion? He felt that even someone in the perfected chi refinement realm could not do that. The outside world was too dangerous. It was still safer inside the sect. This was the first mission he took on outside the sect, and he already found himself in such a situation. Waiter, I heard that Beacon City is quite lively. It's a famous big city nearby. Can you tell me more about that place? Chinga ordered some side dishes and a pot of wine. He took out some silver pieces and placed them on the table. Sir, you're too polite. The smile on the waiter's face was obvious to all. He took the silver pieces and gently shook them. You asked the right person. Beacon City is indeed a famous big city nearby. It's quite prosperous. The most famous landmark is Red Spring Tower, and Miss Wan Wan is the most popular figure there. Have you heard of Miss Wan Wan's name? She's the #1 beauty in Beacon City. Countless young geniuses want to make her smile and spend hundreds of gold on her. It's a pity that I don't have the chance to see just how outstanding her looks are. Chinga calmly listened to the waiter's words and did not interrupt or ask questions. In the end, the waiter could not help but remind him, although Beacon City is prosperous and interesting, it's better for you not to go there for the time being. Why? Chinga suddenly became spirited. Beacon City is such a prosperous city. Do you know who the strongest force is? Who is it? Is it not the city lord? Indeed, it's not the city lord but the Zhu family. The Zhu family has been operating there for more than 300 years and is a famous family. Their influence is quite huge, and they have their hands in almost every industry in Beacon City. Normally, I wouldn't dare to mention these things. Some time ago, the Zhu family's young master wanted to force Miss Wan Wan to be his concubine. Logically speaking, this should be a good thing. No matter how popular she is, she's still a prostitute. To be able to obtain the favor of the Zhu family's young master, that's really a blessing from the heavens. Chinga's eyes flashed slightly. He had read something about it in the mission manual before he came. More than 300 members of the Zhu family had died in a rather strange manner. From the looks of it, this Miss Wan Wan seemed to have something to do with this matter. However, these things had nothing to do with him. He was prepared to leave here tomorrow. Now, he only wanted to ask the waiter for more information so that he could go back and report on his work. The more information he gave, the more it showed that he cared about this mission. Who knew that something big would happen? More than 300 members of the Zhu family all died overnight. Just listening to that story makes me feel scared. The Zhu family was able to sit firmly in Beacon City for 300 years because many martial arts experts became their guards. But they all died in one night. They died quite miserably too. I heard that they didn't seem to be killed by humans. All their flesh and blood had been sucked dry, turning them into nothing but skeletons. Even their hearts were dug out. When the waiter described it, his face revealed a trace of fear. What's important is that there are a few other great families who died in such a strange and terrifying way back then, just like the Zhu family. It's not good that the ones who died are all these big families. Ordinary people have never heard of such a thing. However, I can tell from your clothes that you must be a rich and noble person. I have to remind you not to enter Beacon City for the time being unless there's something particularly important. A few days ago, another big family died. I heard that several big families are preparing to move out of Beacon City. Chinga pondered as he listened to the waiter. He had encountered an illusion when he went to Beacon City, but how did this waiter know about the situation in the city? The illusion obviously did not welcome him on purpose. You're quite well informed. You know what happened a few days ago? Chinga asked with a smile. Sir, there's another branch of this inn in the city. That's the main branch. Usually, we have to transport a batch of meat and vegetables every few days for consumption. Then, have you found any unusual places when you went there in the past? Chinga stared at the waiter's expression. I didn't notice anything unusual, but the place just feels a little awkward. It's mainly because it was so lively in the past, and it has become much more desolate recently. The waiter shook his head. Chapter 17. Dream Realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Miss Wanwan. Chinga, who had fallen into a deep sleep at night, dreamed of a figure. Her face could not be seen clearly, but she was dressed in red, making people feel that she was exceptionally enchanting. The most fatal temptation was simply irresistible. All of Chinga's attention was focused on the red figure. The evil, warding talisman that was stuck on the door of the inn instantly burned into ashes. The town seemed to be covered in a layer of fog. Where is this place? Chinga suddenly realized that he was in a red palanquin. It looked quite festive, and the red color was very eye-catching. He looked down and realized that he was wearing a red wedding dress. From the patterns and texture of the clothes, they were quite luxurious. The most important thing was that there seemed to be a red gauze veil covering his head. Chinga wanted to stand up or move his hand to see where he was, but he found that he could not move no matter what. He could only sit in the red palanquin in a daze. All kinds of sounds rang in his ears, such as gongs and drums. It sounded quite festive, as if they were handling a wedding. Chinga was a little anxious now. He was eager to know where he was and where he was going. What was going on? Why could he not move? Could it be a dream? Otherwise, why was this suddenly happening when he was sleeping in the inn? Soon, the red palanquin stopped. Seeing a little girl at the door, he wanted to help her out of the palanquin. Then, they entered the Zhu family's house through the small door. There was no husband and wife greeting each other. All that entered his eyes were cold faces, and there were many envious and jealous faces too. Chinga knew that he was in trouble. Immortal cultivators had great control over their own bodies. Under normal circumstances, such a situation would not occur, nor would they dream. Regardless of whether this was a dream or not, it was not a good thing for him. It meant that things were beyond his control. Soon, he was led to a side room. It seemed to have been decorated and looked a little festive. Even if it was just a side room, it was still quite big. It could be seen that the Zhu family was quite generous. Chinga could even feel the fear, sadness, and helplessness in his body. Coupled with the conversation he heard from the waiter today, this scene felt so similar. It was just like when Wanwan was taken in as a concubine by young Master Zhu. Then, a terrifying thought appeared in his mind. He seemed to be possessing Wanwan's body right now. He could feel the fear, helplessness, and other emotions in her heart. If he still possessed Wanwan's body during the nuptial night, it would be a living hell. Soon, a man in a groom's outfit pushed open the door. He gently lifted Wanwan's veil and stroked her chin with a smile on his face. It was as if he was sizing up a product that satisfied him. Come, drink this cup of wine. A wine jug appeared in the groom's hand out of thin air. Purple wine was poured out, and it seemed to be emitting a dense aura. What wine is this? Wanwan could not help but ask. The color of this wine was too strange. She had seen many wines, but she had never seen any with such a color. This is good stuff. I found this immortal wine just for you, Miss Wanwan. It'll make your body feel very comfortable. Immortal wine. Does that mean you're an immortal? You can say that the reason why I want to take you in as a concubine is because your physique will allow you to step onto the immortal path like me. After drinking the wine, Wanwan's entire body began to heat up, and she emitted a large amount of steam. This feeling did not make her feel very uncomfortable. Instead, she felt very happy. It really is something from an immortal. I feel very comfortable now. Wan Wan was a little surprised. The resistance she had initially felt disappeared in an instant. Good, good, good. Let's go. I'll take you to a place and teach you how to cultivate. The Zhu family's young master laughed loudly, clearly extremely happy. They arrived at the Zhu family's courtyard. The courtyard was rather quiet, and red lanterns were hung all over the courtyard. There were quite a number of people in the Zhu family. Why was it so strangely quiet at night? There was no sound at all. At this moment, Hichinga suddenly realized that everything in front of him had disappeared. He opened his eyes and sat up on the bed. Without any warning, the strange dream disappeared. Hichinga looked up at the evil, warding talisman that he had stuck on. It had now turned into ashes. Clearly, everything that had happened just now was definitely not a dream. He quickly circulated the spiritual power in his body to check himself. After discovering that he was not suffering from any injuries, he heaved a short sigh of relief. The sky outside was still dark, which meant that not much time had passed. Hichinga held the evil, warding talisman tightly and did not dare to fall asleep again. He was prepared to leave this place at dawn. To be able to influence him silently and pull him into a dream, this ability was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator in the Qi refinement realm could have. Most importantly, the exterminated young master of the Zhu family was actually also a Xiuxianist. It looked like he was quite strong. The wine jug that appeared out of thin air should have come from a storage bag. Not everyone could have a storage bag. It was very expensive, and it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to buy it. The masked man in black that Hichinga killed before did not have one. His strength had already reached the late stage of the Qi refining realm. To be able to pull him into such a dream silently meant that the other person had enough strength to directly attack his mind. After checking his entire body, Hichinga did not find any signs of being attacked. In other words, the other party did not have any ill intentions toward him. There was still another question. Was he the only one who had that dream, or did everyone else in the town dream of it too? Hichinga had too many unanswered questions. At the same time, Zhang Jianqi brought his men to Beacon City, ready to wait for their prey. After all, the final destination of Hichinga's mission was this city. All they needed to do was wait for Hichinga. Young master, there seems to be something wrong with this city. Zhang Er, who was following behind Zhang Jianqi, reminded him. Something's definitely wrong here. For the sect to issue such a mission, there should be a demon wreaking havoc in this city. But judging from the level of the sect mission, it should be an ordinary evil spirit, so don't make a fuss. It could be seen that although Zhang Jianqi was arrogant and conceited, he still had foresight. They were currently at the Zhu family's mansion. The mission stated that the Zhu family died strange deaths. They definitely had to come and take a look. However, they did not expect that Hichinga had already left Beacon City. It could be said that a slight mistake in time had caused them to miss the opportunity. Chapter 18. Absorbing a Million People's Qi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 18. Absorbing a million people's Qi. Hichinga did not sleep for the rest of the night. When the sun rose, he packed up his things and left on his horse. Very soon, he stopped his footsteps with an ugly expression. This place was no longer as simple as an ordinary illusion. According to the map in his mind, there was no way to get out of this town. He was already trapped here. When he had that dream last night, it seemed that he was already left with no way to leave. Looking at the evil, warding talismans on his body burning one by one, his expression was terrifyingly ugly. Lil Butterfly, fly to the top of the sky and take a look. Hichinga was talking to the sound, gathering butterfly. He wanted to see if they could get past the illusion through the sky. The sound, gathering butterfly followed Hichinga's instructions and flew high into the sky, but it soon stopped. The entire town seemed to have been covered by a big bowl. No matter which direction one went, there was no way to leave. Hichinga calmed himself down. No matter what, it was useless to be anxious. He could only explore what was going on. Also, why did the dream that he experienced last night feel so real? If everything in the dream was real, then it meant that the death of the Zhu family should have a lot to do with the Zhu family's young master. It was obvious that Wan was discovered by young Master Zhu to have talent in cultivation, which was why he made her his concubine. What exactly happened that caused the entire Zhu family to be exterminated and the other large families in Beacon City to be killed one after another in the following time? Right now, the entire Beacon City felt rather strange. He had more or less figured out this train of thought. If he could find the Zhu family's young master or Wan, he should be able to solve many problems. The problem was that with his current strength, even if he found them, what use would it be? A huge illusion that could envelop the entire Beacon City was already beyond the ability of an ordinary Qi refinement realm cultivator. In other words, it was a cultivator who had been preparing this huge array formation for a long time, but what was the purpose of covering the entire Beacon City? Hichinga felt that he had simply walked to a dead end. His strength was too weak. Since there was no way to leave this place, he could only think of the best way to increase his safety and strength first. Hichinga returned to the inn and used a talisman to strengthen the inn. At the same time, he stuck on the warning talisman, evil, warding talismans, and silent talismans. He began to cultivate in seclusion. He took out the spirit coins he had obtained previously. The spiritual energy inside was quite pure. The pure spiritual energy extracted from spirit stones could effectively speed up cultivation. When Hichinga was in seclusion, Zhang Jianqi and the others had already arrived at Beacon City. They stopped here and stationed people at all the crime scenes to wait for Hichinga's arrival. They did not know that Hichinga had already been here. After all, they did not expect Hichinga to ride a horse and use the body-lifting talisman and the divine strider talisman to travel quickly. Zhang Jianqi thought he had brought this group of people over at full speed. As for searching for Hichinga on the road, it would only waste more time. There were several roads from the Tianxian sect to Beacon City. It was better to come directly to this destination and wait here. It was more cost-effective. Moreover, there were still strange phenomena in the city, which meant that Hichinga had not dealt with this matter. Hichinga's mission had not been completed, so it was impossible for him to return so easily. Hichinga was enclosed. Door cultivation in the inn. He paid a year's worth of money in one go so that they would not disturb him. Gold and silver in the mortal world were cheap for cultivators like them. No matter how much it cost, Hichinga would not feel the pinch. Although Hichinga was trapped in the small town and could not leave, he did not realize that ordinary people did not seem to be hindered. After all, he had been in seclusion in the inn and did not plan on going out. The mission that Hichinga received was not without a time limit. He had to complete the mission within 2 months. If he did not complete it by then and he did not return, the sect would probably investigate. Hichinga was prepared to support himself for 2 to 3 months while he improved his strength. Since he had no way to return, he could only wait for the sect to rescue him. At least he had not been hurt so far. Half a month had passed, and Hichinga's strength had improved slightly, but he still had not broken through. He did not sleep for half a month and kept cultivating. He was afraid that once he slept, he would enter a dream and lose control of himself. That feeling was really too powerless. Feeling the increase in his strength, Hichinga smiled. He went through half a month peacefully. He did not have any dreams or encounter anything bad. It could be said that if he did not know that this place was a little strange, he really would not feel that there was any danger. Soon, he found that a wisp of his chi was flying into a void uncontrollably. Immortal cultivators were very sensitive to the control of their own state. Naturally, they could not let their chi leak out. It seemed that the peaceful days had passed. Hichinga was actually a little uncertain about his current situation. He did not know if he was in an illusion, if the city was enveloped by an array, or if it was some other thing. Hichinga had never learned anything related to arrays, so he lacked a basic understanding of these things. The loss of his chi immediately reminded Hichinga of the people he had seen in Beacon City. Their faces were all ashen. At that time, he was still surprised, but now, he felt that it should be the effect of losing chi. Those people's condition was quite bad, which meant they must have lost a lot of their chi. In other words, whether it was an illusion or an array, it was harvesting the chi of everyone in the entire city. However, the amount absorbed each time was rarely a sustainable harvest. It gave the people a chance to catch their breath, so it was really quite a bold plan. To be able to make such a bold move, one could basically conclude that the person behind it was a demonic cultivator. Hichinga's scalp went numb when he thought about the millions of people in Beacon City being harvested to increase the other party's strength. The quality was not enough to make up for the loss in quantity. However, this place would probably become a dead city after a long time. After a certain period of time, the chi of all the people here would definitely be completely harvested. Hichinga circulated the spiritual power in his body with all his might to prevent his chi from being sucked away. Fortunately, the absorption power was not very strong, and ordinary people could not detect it. It made sense. There were millions of people in the entire city. It was impossible for the power that was absorbing millions of people's chi to be very powerful. Ordinary people would not be able to notice this, but martial artists with strong vitality should be able to. Chapter 19. Heavenly Demon Charm Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hichinga suddenly thought of the few big families that had died in Beacon City. It seemed that all of them had powerful martial artists to protect their homes. Could it be that they had discovered that their chi was flowing out uncontrollably? They wanted to find the problem but were eventually killed. During this period of time, Zhang Jianqi's life was actually similar to Hichinga's. He had also been cultivating seriously. No matter how arrogant and domineering he was, he had always known that strength was the most fundamental thing. He had always been quite hardworking in his cultivation. If he did not think that Hichinga had the secret to becoming stronger, he would not have gone through so much trouble to deal with Hichinga. The main reason was that he had used the same method previously and obtained opportunities from others, allowing him to gain a lot. Otherwise, why would he waste his cultivation time chasing after Hichinga? As for letting others replace him, Zhang Jianqi was worried that those people would covet the opportunity. The subordinates he brought with him were all waiting for Hichinga at important places. However, he did not expect that after waiting for more than half a month, there was still no news. On the contrary, Zhang Jianqi felt his chi being absorbed during the process of cultivation. Feeling his chi leave his body, Zhang Jianqi's expression changed. He did the same thing as Hichinga. He immediately circulated the spiritual power in his body to prevent his chi from leaving his body. His expression was a little solemn. A wisp of his chi was about to escape his control and fly into the sky. Fortunately, he was able to stop the circulation of his own chi. If that were the case, ordinary people would not be able to escape like him. Thinking of Beacon City, his scalp immediately went numb. This evil spirit was too bold. This city was definitely not simple. It was impossible for a small evil spirit to create it. Zhang Jianqi wanted to leave immediately. However, Hichinga had not arrived. He felt a little conflicted. His main goal had not been achieved, and Zhang Jianqi was a little annoyed. However, there might be threats if he stayed any longer. This city was definitely not ordinary. His expression was a little gloomy, but he still decided to leave this place first and set up an ambush on the way back to the sect. However, how could Beacon City be so simple? It was not a place where one could come and go as they pleased. Hichinga was also able to escape from the main city to a remote town because of his talent. Even so, he was now trapped in the town and could not escape. In a dilapidated temple in Beacon City, a Buddha statue with a severed arm had turned black all over. It fell to the ground and did not move. In the middle, there was a huge lotus throne with demonic patterns carved on it. Black flames were burning on the crimson lotus throne. There was a woman sitting cross-legged on the lotus throne. Her eyes were filled with pain. The endless chi from Beacon City had gathered here. All of it was injected into the lotus throne. After the lotus throne was purified, the pure essence energy was injected into the woman in red. The red-robed woman's face began to contort as she howled in pain. Blood flowed from her pupils. She was wearing a red wedding dress that looked so eye-catching. A handsome young man stood beside her with a joyful smile on his face. He was the young master of the Zhu family. However, his identity was fake. The real young master of the Zhu family had died long ago. He was originally Zhu Zheng, a legacy disciple of the heavenly demon sect. He did not expect to be able to find a heavenly demon charm body in this remote mortal city. This was a physique that made countless demonic cultivators go crazy. For this reason, Zhu Zheng spent a lot of effort setting up everything in Beacon City, preparing to use the heavenly demon charm body to build his foundation again. Building a new foundation was not simple. He needed to shatter his current Tao foundation. If he did not have the appropriate method, he would definitely leave behind Tao injuries. Other than that, breaking the Tao foundation would instantly cause one's cultivation level to drop, and one's body would definitely be weak for a long time. After the Qi refinement realm was the foundation establishment realm. This realm was quite important. The stronger and more stable the foundation, the easier the future path would be. There were many ways to build one's foundation, but there were only two that were commonly used. The first was to directly consume a foundation establishment pill and activate one's qi to break through. This method was relatively simple, but it was still quite difficult. The second method was to use a spiritual item to fuse with one's own qi to establish the foundation. This was a much stronger method than the first one. Not everyone could obtain a spiritual item like that, and it had always been quite rare. Other than those with heaven-defying luck, powerful backgrounds, or extraordinary talent, very few ordinary people could use this method. Zhu Zheng was a true disciple of the heavenly demon sect. However, he was still in the most ordinary foundation establishment realm back then and did not manage to find a suitable spiritual item. His master had been in seclusion for several years and had completely ignored him. Of course, the spiritual items mentioned here included all the living beings in the world, flowers and trees, water droplets, and even rivers. They could all form spiritual objects. The level of the spiritual items was different, so the strength of the Tao foundation that was ultimately forged was naturally different as well. Wan's heavenly demon charm body could be used as a top-notch foundation establishment spiritual item. Directly using living creatures for foundation establishment would leave behind hidden dangers, and Wan's heavenly demon charm body had not been activated yet. Zhu Zheng had set up the sky covering array in Beacon City to cover the entire city and absorb the chi of millions of people in the city so that he could activate the heavenly devil charm body and increase Wan's strength at the same time. He wanted to reach the best state and turn her into his foundation establishment spiritual item. Zhu Zheng became happier and happier as he watched Wan's body transform continuously. Her aura grew stronger and stronger. However, Wan could not feel happy no matter what. She did not expect the so-called cultivation to end up like this. Countless amounts of qi flowed into her body, causing her to feel quite a bit of pain. She could not completely absorb such a huge amount of qi. Even with the lotus throne under her, it was still quite painful. She really did not want to endure it anymore. She hoped that someone could save her. She did not want to cultivate anymore. She just wanted to be an ordinary person. The dream that Hichinga had was her technique. She wanted to send a message to Hichinga, asking him to save her. For such a long time, Chinga was the only cultivator who could leave Beacon City, which brought her endless surprises. However, she did not dare to make any big moves. She could only use the dream realm, and it was a very shallow dream realm technique. However, who would have thought that at the critical moment, she would be discovered? The dream stopped abruptly, and Chinga woke up. This caused Zhu Zheng to immediately activate the array. Even if Chinga had hearing, he could not leave. He did not take down Chinga directly because he still had other uses for him. Besides, could a bird in a cage escape? Chapter 20. Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A long time passed, but Chinga did not feel happy at all. Instead, he became more and more serious. If he could not escape, it meant that the danger had not been resolved. The thought of continuing to cultivate had also faded a lot, especially when the chi in his body was being absorbed. Opening the window, Chinga's heart sank as he saw the crowd's expressions getting uglier by the day. However, he was helpless now. The sound, gathering butterfly on Chinga's shoulder could feel Chinga's emotional instability and anxiety. It gently flapped its wings to comfort him. Chinga smiled and asked the sound, gathering butterfly to go outside to investigate. He had been in seclusion for so many days. It was not that he was not observing the outside world. The sound, gathering butterfly was his ears and eyes. In the evening, the sun was setting, and it was red, like a shy girl's face. Chinga sighed. The setting sun is infinitely beautiful, but it's close to dusk. At this moment, a young man looked in Chinga's direction. His lips were red, and his teeth were white. His face was as white as snow, and he was wearing a black robe with golden patterns. Chinga could not feel his aura. The body of the sound, gathering butterfly trembled, and it let out a warning cry. Zhu Zheng smiled at Chinga. I didn't expect you to be so self-aware. Chinga felt a chill run down his spine. He felt as if he had been seen through, especially from the man's words. Who are you? Chinga asked in a low voice. Who am I? You don't need to know too much. Come with me. Zhu Zheng's tone left no room for negotiation. Chinga's first reaction was to refuse, but the strong pressure made him lower his head. He could only walk over and activate the Vajra talisman, the divine strider talisman, and the body-lifting talisman on his body. He was ready to escape at any time. However, as soon as he got close to Zhu Zheng, a punch landed on his stomach. Before he could even react, the Vajra talisman shattered. Chinga spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body convulsed on the ground as if it had been hit by a heavy hammer. With just one punch, Chinga lost the ability to resist. These things are useless. Chinga fainted after hearing that. When he woke up, he realized that he was trapped in a corner of an unknown array. He was surprised to see the figure beside him. Zhang Jianqi. He had specially collected information on the Zhang brothers, so he recognized Zhang Jianqi at a glance. Other than that, there was someone trapped in every corner of the circle. He circulated the spiritual power in his body and found that he could not move his body, nor could he use his spiritual power. Looking at the center of the array, there was a huge blood-red lotus throne. In the middle of it sat a woman. She was dressed in a red wedding dress, and the atmosphere was quite strange. However, the red wedding dress made Chinga's pupils shrink. It was exactly the same as in his dream, except that the woman's face could not be seen. Just as he was about to speak, his mouth could not move. It was as if he had been immobilized. His heart instantly sank to the bottom. It was over. He had lived carefully for more than 20 years, but he did not expect to die in the end. He looked at Zhang Jianqi with hatred. Seeing him in this place, he was almost 100% certain that it was this man who had forced him to leave the sect. Otherwise, he could have bribed the disciples so that he could choose a safer sect mission like how he had always done in the past. Zhang Jianqi also stared at Chinga. After all, his ultimate goal was Hichinga, but who would have thought that an accident would happen? How could a character like Zhu Jing appear in an ordinary sect mission? He was simply unlucky. He was at the peak of the Qi refinement realm and had brought a few late-stage Qi refinement realm subordinates with him. In the end, he did not have the slightest bit of strength to resist. The difference between Foundation establishment and Qi refinement was too great. It was probably difficult for even the top-notch prodigies to cross realms and fight back. Not to mention him. Looking at Hichinga's eyes that were about to devour him, Zhang Jianqi felt extremely uncomfortable. However, he was also a little surprised. Did Hichinga discover his plan? The hatred in Hichinga's heart was deep. The moment he stepped out of the sect, he encountered a situation where he would die. He forced himself to calm down. Now, he had to think of a way to survive. The strong desire to live made Hichinga think about what to do. Suddenly, a faint sound wave rang in his ears. The sound, gathering butterfly, was not caught. It had been released to investigate the situation and had not returned yet, so Zhu Jing did not discover it. The sound, gathering butterfly, followed the unique connection between it and Hichinga. The contract between Hichinga and the sound, gathering butterfly allowed them to sense each other's location and general condition. It could be said to be quite powerful. If the sound, gathering butterfly could break the chains that bound him, he might have a chance to escape. Hichinga pulled himself together. There was still hope. He silently observed his surroundings, looking for an escape route. He was in a huge hall that looked a little old. The beams were very high, and in the middle was a blood-colored lotus throne and a woman in a red wedding dress. There were array patterns carved around it. It should be some kind of special array. The blood-red lotus throne was very likely the array foundation, the core of the array. There was a person trapped at every corner of the array. Judging from their auras, they should be cultivators. It was impossible to sense their strength now that they were trapped. He could only guess that they were cultivators from their auras. Cultivators were very different from ordinary humans and warriors. Over time, their auras would naturally be different. Everyone was strangely silent inside and outside the formation. Most of them had fear in their eyes. There were torches on the wall that had not been burned out or replaced. However, the fire was not very bright, and the whole place was dark. Time passed by slowly. In between, everyone was fed a pill. Hichinga knew that it was a fasting pill. It could be said to be the cheapest pill in the world. It could eliminate hunger and fill one's stomach, but it did not have much spiritual power. He did not know how much time had passed, and he could not see the situation outside. The situation in the room did not change. Anyway, he had not seen Zhu Jing since he fainted that day. The connection between Hichinga and the sound, gathering butterfly, was getting stronger and stronger. He gradually became excited and prayed that the sound, gathering butterfly, would come quickly. After staying here for such a long time, he had long been suffocated. He was constantly worried that he would not live to the next second. The door was suddenly opened, and the familiar sunlight shone in. Hichinga instantly woke up. The spiritual energy in his body was sealed, and he could not stay awake all the time. Especially since the room was dark, it made him sleepy. Zhu Jing walked in and looked at everything in the room with a smile, especially when he saw some hatred and fear in everyone's eyes. "Alright, in another 7 days, I'll send you to paradise. From now on, you won't have to endure the troubles of the mortal world." As soon as he finished speaking, many people glared and gritted their teeth, but they could not even curse. Hichinga's eyes darkened, wondering if he could escape before this. The sense of urgency in his heart rose. However, he was trapped here, unable to break free. Looking at the sunlight outside, it was probably noon.